Okie dokies. Okie dokies. Cool. Hello and welcome to Philosophy Roulette number 219. 219 is a big number. It's not a small number. Where I read and review philosophy papers live on air and just talk about them and see what's going on. Just about all of these things, although you are free to suggest one or just randomly picked off the front page of New on Phil Papers. So as long as it's not too long, send it in and I might read it. But yeah, so let's see what we got. British Journal for the History of Philosophy, The Sublime Reader. What is that? Okay, it's edited. Selection of 38 authors who have attempted to describe, analyze, and explain the elusive object, feeling expensive. Yeah, so like, what is it to be sublime? That could be fun. Alright, but that's a sort of a book. So it looks like all of these are volumes that they've been reviewing. Okay, that's cool. Yes, in review stuff. You could click on this and just see if they have anything kind of interesting. Is it today the 26th or 27th? One sec. So how is this GMT? Because it should be past midnight in GMT. Because I'm in New York. Oh well, whatever. The vagaries of time are very difficult. Let's see, what do we got? 74 matches. Okay, yeah. Oh, so a ton of reviews. Alright. This article, Hegel and the History of Idealism. This article attempts to expose an unwarranted narrowness in the study of idealism in 19th century philosophy and to show that the field of idealism is much wider than usually assumed. Let's take a look. Hegel in history. Let's see if it's available. If it's here, maybe. Nope. Nope. Get access. Not gonna happen. I'm not fighting with the publishers today. Don't feel like it. Historiographies of philosophy. Okay. Whatevers. It's like that's history of history. Alright. I gave them a shot, but most of their stuff is review, so we'll move on to next journal. J. Phil. Let's see what J. Phil has. Philosophy and Public Affairs and Synthesis. The Skill of Self-Control. Maybe that would be interesting. I wonder how long this is. Let's see. Lecture 1? What does that mean? It's too long, but I wonder if he's like publishing lecture notes. A simpler, more compelling money pump with foresight. Johann Gustafsson. Did I read this? I've read something else by Gustafsson before. I must have. I remember the name. One might think that money pumps directed at agents with cyclic preferences can be... I think I've read this one. Yeah, cyclic preferences. That's what it is. Maybe this is a response to something else, but definitely it was reading something on cyclic preferences. So, wow. Look at that. 1100. Andrew Bailey. I think I read Andrew Bailey. Let me go see if... I think I've read... Man, I've been reading a lot of these people. I'm getting confused now. And it's on his website. Did I read this? Generic Animalism. 30 pages. I definitely clicked on it. I'm not going to read something that's 30 pages, though, so... Yeah, if anyone's watching, feel free to, make a suggestion as to what I should read. But yeah, 30 pages not happening, because that would take me at least 2 hours to get through. And I start losing my mind after, well, I start losing focus. I just would say the mind's been gone plenty of time. But the focus suffers after too long. Then this one, let's see what this one is. I love it when they're available like this, though. Is this too long? 47 pages. No thank you. Okay. So there's only one of 4 matches on this page, and nope, it's not even. That's the problem with the forthcoming. They don't have page matches. Let's just take a look if anything else looks easy. Primary reasons and normative reasons. Normativity. I'm always a little bit worried when people talk about normativity, to tell you the truth. Not sure normativity makes the metaphysical standing of normativity. But I like that all these papers are available. So, 1 of 12. Okay, you are the leading contender. 1 of 37, you are double spaced, but that would be double spaced at 18, 19 pages, so nope. And 24 double spaced. Okay, so that's 12 pages. Cool. The rejection of consequentializing versus primary reasons as normative reasons. Alright, how do we choose? Well, my friends out there in Twitch land, if you have a choice, please let me know, because this is 24 pages double spaced or 12 pages single spaced. I can't even guess on length. So who do we go with? That means we get to flip the coin. Heads, good old US quarter, is primary reasons is normative reasons, and tails is rejection of consequentializing. So here we go. And the answer is heads. So the rejection of consequentializing will have to be saved for another day, but primary reasons as normative reasons is what we get. So, download button, save file. I really hope I didn't read this. I always forget, sometimes I blank out on what I've read before, and that's very bad. Okay, so that's there. We want to follow along, you can get the link in the chat, or also if you ever come late and you want the link, you can also type !paper in the chat, and that'll pull that link back up. So let's open this up. Loading 12-page document. Switch view, and yeah, here we go. So this is Primary Reasons as Normative Reasons by Nathan Robert Howard in the Journal of Philosophy. A journal I am proud to say I have been rejected from. Yeah. I've sent them stuff. There's no restriction to sending people stuff, so you too can be rejected from the Journal of Philosophy if you so wanted. It is really not hard to be rejected from the Journal of Philosophy. In fact, I think most people are rejected from the Journal of Philosophy. But not this gentleman, or lady, or whatever else Nathan Robert Howard would like to go by. And I apologize for how I say your names, and anything else I mispronounce, because basically I do a very basic English. Alright, beginning. Donald Davidson's conception of motivating or primary reasons for action as belief-desire pairs was and remains hugely influential in action theory, but it does not enjoy comparable influence in moral theory. Primary reasons are often treated as categorically distinct from moral reasons. So primary and moral. So we've got two classes of things, and I guess that's what this author is arguing against. And from normative reasons more generally, usually on grounds that moral reasons, 1, can be motivating reasons, and 2, are facts. What? They're distinct on the grounds that moral reasons are motivating and 2 are facts. Okay. We'll see. I'm not sure exactly what... I know people love facts nowadays, but I'm not in love with facts myself, so we'll see what this means. The reasons underlies an orthodoxy according to which both motivating and normative reasons are facts, propositions, or states of affairs. Okay, so yeah, this is the orthodoxy here. But the thesis that normative reasons for action are primary reasons enjoys better support than its critics imagine. This paper defends this thesis, proceeding as follows. I begin by showing that a popular view about what makes reasons normative implies that normative reasons are primary reasons because primary reasons draw crucial distinctions in our motives that facts generally don't. Okay, so yeah, this is going to say facts facts are just sort of like raw things, like they're just sort of like gross facts about the world. But when you have reasons, you have some sort of agent directed, maybe point for bringing it up. Like you have some sort of goal for like bringing it up. And facts by themselves aren't normally treated as goal-oriented things, which normative can be. Okay. So that's what I think is going to happen here. I'll then show that because primary reasons draw crucial distinctions between kinds of justification that facts generally don't, normative reasons are primary reasons. Finally, I'll describe an important but underappreciated problem for the orthodox conception of normative reasons and show that it does not arise for the competing Davidsonian conception. These three claims form the basis for thinking of normative reasons for action as primary reasons. Alright, so this is going to keep going. Okay, let me finish up this introductory bit. The primary reasons I discuss differ in one important respect from the ones Davidson describes, at least on one reading. According to that reading, primary reasons are pairs of tokened beliefs and desires. For example, when I intentionally drink water, my primary reason on this view is my belief that water will quench my thirst, paired with my desire to quench my thirst. This conception of primary reasons prevents them from being normative reasons. That's because agents can have a normative reason for acting without tokening any of the belief-desire pairs relevant to that action. This happens when agents are not moved to do what they morally should. So normative reasons cannot be pairs of beliefs and desires. Yes, desire to do something. If you're gonna have like a pair, or like an intention, you have to have like the intentionally drink water. Your reason is that you want to do something, and it's sort of like a conscious thing, and then you believe that the water will do it, and then like because you have a desire to quench your thirst, and you have a belief that this is how you satisfy your desire. But of course, moral reasons, you can just do stuff without having to like say this is what satisfies it. You can just move in a moral direction without having some sort of token of a belief desire pair. Like you don't have to think about like your beliefs in moral things. You don't have to be like, well, do I actually think it's good not to kill people? Oh yeah, I do. And then you don't go kill people. You don't need to do that, or at least you're not supposed to have to do that in moral reasoning. But if anyone has any questions there, please ask away. This is my first time reading it too, but I'll try to explain. 2. Primary reasons and good reasoning. Rather, I'll instead assume that primary reasons are the contents of those belief-desire pairs. On this account, when I intentionally drink water, my primary reason is the content of the belief that water will quench my thirst, paired with the content of the desire to quench my thirst. That is, the fact that water will quench my thirst, and the goal of quenching my thirst. Yeah, this is what I was saying when goal-oriented before. So, here's where we're talking about facts are not goal-oriented. They're just sort of, hey, okay. I was like, why didn't it color in first? Facts don't tend to have like goals associated with them. They're supposed to just be sort of like gross features of the world. And so they're not, if you have a fact that water will quench your thirst, it's different from the goal of quenching your thirst. So so we got facts and goals. And the facts tend not to be goals. Or at least they're thought not to be. Okay. What gives this view continuity with Davidson's is that its primary reasons are the contents of Davidson's reasons. Okay, so this is taking Davidson's scheme, but only part of it. Like, the reasons are the contents of Davidson's reasons. So this is sort of the reference back. Why is that so slow to load today? That's weird. While this paper focuses on advantages for moral theorizing that come from thinking of normative reasons as fact-goal pairs, this conception of reasons may also circumvent a well-known challenge to Davidson's program in the philosophy of action. It is often assumed that reasons are what we deliberate about when we act intentionally. However, as several philosophers have observed, our psychological states are not normally things about which we deliberate, they are merely the things in virtue of which we deliberate. So motivating reasons, these philosophers conclude, cannot be primary reasons if primary reasons are psychological states. However, thinking of primary reasons as the contents of belief-desire pairs, rather than as beliefs and desires themselves, dispenses with this worry about psychologism while remaining recognizably Davidsonian. As a result, there are independent grounds for thinking of motivating reasons as the contents of belief-desire pairs. However, I won't dwell on this distinction, turning instead to the titular claim that normative reasons should be thought of as primary reasons. All right, so we're getting away from this sort of like more abstract version saying the contents. What it is that you're thinking about is what matters. Because if it was just the thoughts or like sort of the psychological state of the thoughts, we don't think about our thoughts unless we're like doing some sort of like psychology or philosophy of mind or cognitive science. That may be what we're talking about, but the point is, what is the content of the thought is what we're using as like our reasons. Like, what's the idea behind it? What's the goal, as was stated up here? So the goal is in virtue of about what states are not things about which we deliberate unless we're doing like psychology, but they are the states are in virtue of the goals which we're deliberating about. That's fair. This is a very sort of, it's Davidsonian, which is a very popular sort of scheme, and this sort of takes this is a sort of nice view of this stuff. It does seem to be, at least easily defensible if you're going to be in this area to sort of take this position. 2 questions about normative reasons are easy to elide. The first concerns what makes or grounds something's status as a normative reason. The second concerns what kind of things can enjoy that status, that is, what things are eligible to be normative reasons. To illustrate, note that the question of what makes someone a Major League Baseball player, an MLB baseball player, not major, it's funny if you say it out like I did, MLB baseball player differs from the question of what MLB baseball players are. What makes someone a MLB baseball player is signing a MLB contract. That's an answer to the first question, but applied to baseball players, not reasons. However, only people are baseball players. That's an answer to the second question. Moral philosophers tend to focus on the first question about reasons, but this paper is principally concerned with the upshots of a Davidsonian answer to the second question. As a result, to think of primary reasons as normative reasons is a call to consider a new model for theories of normative reasons. For the model of reasons we assume shapes our downstream inquiry about which reasons are genuinely normative and about what makes them normative. Alright, so this is fair. We've got like different sort of ways of looking at stuff. It's like, well, what makes somebody something is, in this case, it's a convention. It's conventional. What makes something like a baseball player, a professional baseball player. But I mean, the convention that makes them a professional baseball player does depend on the non-conventional fact that there's a human sort of activity, and so there need to be agents acting here, and that's kind of what makes or grant something status. Like, what's the convention of that makes it one thing, but what kind of thing is it to begin with, so that it could be a normative thing, but it might not be. But but then what kind of thing is it to be a normative reason anyway, as opposed to what kind of reason exists versus what makes it normative or not. And so these are kind of, details here. Yeah, but see, this comes in and they say a whole new model for what counts as reasons, basically. Okay, fine. Whatevers. Some accounts about what makes a reason normative, the first question, are neutral on the second question of what things are reasons. For example, Derek Parfit and T.M. I was going to read Derek Jeter there. I was like, Derek Jeter is a baseball player, or was professional baseball player for the New York Yankees. And Derek Parfit and T.M. Scanlon's position that the normativity of reasons is primitive, that nothing grounds something's status as a reason, implies no constraints on what reasons are all by itself. That's not to say that Parfit or Scanlon are silent on the second question of what reasons are. On the contrary, they appear to agree that reasons are facts. Rather, the point I wish to highlight is that the grounds for their agreement is independent of their account of what makes reasons normative. As a result, their primitivism is compatible with the thesis that normative reasons are primary reasons. Yeah, sure, if you declare something to be primitive, you can say a lot about it. It's just those aren't going to be justifying its primitivity, you're just describing what it is. So, that's fair. By contrast, some competing accounts of what makes reasons normative do impose constraints on what things are reasons. So, yeah, if you have some more fundamental theory, then you can sort of impose constraints on it. That is, their distinctive answer to the first question constrains their answer to the second. These accounts are of particular interest here, for some such constraints make it especially appealing to think of normative reasons for action as primary reasons. For example, Bernard Williams famously argued that there is a normative reason for you to do something only if that reason is, in some sense, be capable of motivating you to act in that way through deliberation. Yeah. Some accounts hold that this deliberative role of normative reasons is the key to answering the first question about reasons, arguing broadly that a reason is normative just when and because it figures in an episode of good reasoning. In particular, some think that a reason for action is normative just when and because it is a good basis for acting that way. Call this the good basis account. Alright, so a reason is a reason when you have a good basis for acting a certain way, given that reason, I guess. Unlike the primitivist account, the good basis account straightforwardly constrains what kind of things can be reasons. Clearly, only basis for action can be good basis for action, and our basis for action are our motivating reasons. Consequently, the good basis account implies that all normative reasons are motivating reasons, and as a result, if the account is true, then conclusions about the ontology of motivating reasons settle questions about the ontology of normative reasons. Fair enough. This connection between kinds of reasons provides the first argument for thinking that normative reasons are primary reasons. The argument begins with the observation that since primary reasons are individuated not just by the facts that they contain, but also by their goals, primary reasons are strictly more finely grained than corresponding facts. Again, with the goals talk as I highlighted above. Hey, Bubba Bloop, what's going on? Reading a paper on sort of basically agency and why are you not scrolling? What are reasons? Like, why? What kind of thing is a reason? So, like, why do you have reasons? So, and what is a primary reason? I don't know if they even mentioned what counts as primary in this talk, but in this paper. But hey, it's okay. What is a fundamental reason then? Pick your favorite word. Yeah, hope you're doing well. And ask me if you got a question or just tell me what's going on. So primary reasons are strictly more fine-grained than corresponding facts, because facts don't necessarily have any point to them. They can just be like how many inches of rain fell in the rainforest last year. But like if you have a reason for knowing that, oh, cool, easy 1,000 followers. Thanks, Destructive. Appreciate that. Ban. Okay, cool. But thanks for stopping by. I appreciate it. So we'll see if easy followers. Like I always say, I kind of like the big followers one because I always think big flowers. I'm like, I want flowers. Why doesn't someone send me flowers for streaming? It'd be so cool. I'm so gonna do that if I get like some time and effort. I'm gonna make like an easy way to like support your favorite streamer with flowers. Click there, send them like $1, and you get like a rose or something. It'd be so sweet. Anthony made a fake big follows. Oh, that'd be funny. I didn't see that. All right, big follows official. That's a good idea, and you can have like announcements and stuff, and like. Yeah, you could do like a whole parody account. That's a good idea. Shoot, should have thought of that myself. Yeah, I'm still going to make my bigflowers.com so you can send like people like a bouquet. Alright, the fineness of grain makes primary reasons appealing, motivating reasons because, as I'll now show, claims about our motives are similarly fine-grained. For example, it seems plausible that Cubs fans and the Cubs hater can head to Wrigley Field Wrigley, only because the Cubs are playing. Wrigley Field is a field where the Cubs play. Despite corresponding to the same fact, the two baseball fans' goals in going to Wrigley Field differ. One goes to Wrigley to see the Cubs win, the other goes to see them lose. However, if motivating reasons are simply facts, then we're forced to concede counterintuitively that the hater and the fan go to Wrigley for the same reason because they act on the basis of the same fact. But that seems clearly wrong. After all, one goes to Wrigley Field to see the Cubs win and the other goes to see the Cubs lose. Well, really, I think they both go to see the Cubs play. They both go to see the Cubs play, and the Cubs play at Wrigley is a fact, and it is the same between them. So I have a little bit of a question right here. How are we slicing motivating facts versus non-motivating facts? Because they both are going to see the Cubs play, and they both want to see the Cubs play. Now, you can say they want to see the Cubs play for different reasons, but how specific do we need to be for them to say, well, they go there to see the Cubs play, one happens to want to see them win, one wants to see them lose, and yeah. So this looks like this might already build in a little bit more information in the description of the individuals here than someone might. You'd be a little worried about that just on the get-go, you know? Because it's like if you presented a different fact, it might look differently. All right. This argument suggests that motivating reasons are more fine-grained than facts, for, as in the Cubs case, a single fact can provide two distinct motivating reasons. But we can appropriate one of Davidson's. What is the fact? So, can head only because the Cubs are playing. Yeah, I mean, only because the Cubs are playing. But then it says, like, why is it? Okay, so did this author account for what I'm saying, or am I losing it here is the question. Like, they could go because they're playing, but that's not motivating enough. You need to be more specific in the motivating reason, which is because they hate them or they love them. But again, who claims where the specificity ends? I mean, if you ask the people, they say, well, I hate them, so I go there to root against them. And the other person might say, I go there not to. But why does that even matter? Does the intentions of the actor matter in this case? And then that's a completely different theory. If you're talking about, like, you have to match up the facts with certain intentions. And then you have to be able to specify intentions. So I'm not sure about this, actually. I mean, it does make sense that ultimately one's a hater and one's a fan, but then you could, again, ask, why are they haters and fans? And then you could go back and maybe things get a little weirder after that point. So, I mean, maybe because both of their dads loved the Cubs, and one of them hates their father, and one of them loves their father. And so if you go back far enough, maybe the facts also line up. So they're both going because of the way their relationship with their father then. It's like, so this is the question is, like, they're talking about fine grainness, but I'm not sure they've actually pinned down the level of grain that you need to pick out facts versus reasons here. Okay, continuing. And please ask me questions if I didn't make sense there. This argument suggests that motivating reasons are more fine-grained than facts, for, as in the Cubs case, a single fact can provide two distinct motivating reasons. Well, because the Cubs are playing, but yeah, so you can split off more reasons, but again, why? Or when do you get to stop? But we can appropriate one of Davidson's observations to support the stronger conclusion that motivating reasons are more finely grained than facts in the matter of primary reasons. Davidson writes, a primary reason consists of a belief and a pro-attitude, but it is generally odious to mention both. If you tell me you are eating the jib because you think that it will stop the mane, you're easing the jib because you think it will stop the mane from backing, I don't need to be told that you want to stop the mane from backing. And if you say that you are biting your thumb at me because you want to insult me, there is no point in adding that you think that by biting your thumb at me, you will insult me. Oh, that's what it is. The computer's upgrading, so that's why it's a little slow. I hope there wasn't too much lag there. You just got a pop-up box. Okay, in the example when you ease the jib, we can say that the reason you're easing the jib is that it will stop the main from backing, or we can say that the reason you're doing so is to stop the main from backing. Okay, is that it will stop the main, or is to stop the main from backing. On a Davidsonian picture, these two claims attribute the same motivating reason. One uses a that clause and one uses a to clause, each of which refers to one of the reason's two parts. The first refers to the part corresponding to the belief that easing the jib will stop the main from backing. The second refers to the part corresponding to the desire to stop the main from backing. Nevertheless, it's natural to run these claims together, for we can pick out the single reason by naming either of its parts. Indeed, it's often excessive to use both claims, as Davidson observes. That these different claims pick out different parts of the same reason explains why we often elide them unless we're careful. Okay, so one is saying what you're doing with the idea that it's going to like inherently physically stop something else. So you're describing the what versus the why. And because we can usually derive the why if we understand the situation from the what, then you don't get confused between one or the other. And you don't have to, once you explain what someone's doing, you don't actually have to explain why, because if it's common knowledge what is going on when you do this, then you don't actually also have to explain it. It's like, I'm going to eat dinner. It's like you don't have to explain because you are hungry. Like, that's fine. But what are you doing? So you're going to go so it's basically, instead of this sort of nautical stuff that I have no idea about, if I said I'm going to go boil some pasta, I don't have to explain that I'm hungry. You can basically assume that. But if I say that, like, I'm going to go, I'm hungry, so I might go make some pasta, then you can say, well, all right, then the goal is that you're hungry. You don't have to do both. So it's like you don't have to explain sort of like why boiling matters, like boiling the water. So I'm going to put some water up. You understand that I'm making dinner. Okie doke. The Cubs fan and the Cubs hater go to Wrigley for different reasons. We can identify these distinct reasons given by the fact that the Cubs are playing at Wrigley through two clauses. The Cubs fan's reason for going to Wrigley is to see the Cubs win. The Cubs haters' reason for going to Wrigley is to see the Cubs lose. The cogency of these two claims and the fact that they appear to name goals, the contents of the desire to see Cubs win and the desire to see the Cubs lose, respectively, offers independent reason for doubting the motivating reasons are just facts. Although the orthodox view predicts that if two agents act on the basis of the same fact, they act for the same reason, thinking of the motivating reasons as primary reasons gives the motivating reasons their intuitive fineness of grain. This is good grounds for thinking that all possible motivating reasons are primary reasons. And if all normative reasons are possible motivating reasons, as the good basis account applies, then we should think that all normative reasons are primary reasons as well. Okay, so let's see, how much more of this section are we just going to keep going? All right, this is going to go on for a while. Now, I just want to reiterate my claim from above that the fear here is that you're getting to pick and choose which ones count as motivating reasons and not. So I'm a little afraid that this is a circular account at this point. That doesn't make me right. This is just my fear. And my fear is that because both they say that the Cubs are playing at the stadium and that's why both people are going, but they have different reasons to. Well, that's one fact that they had in common, but then you get to pick different facts about each of them and call those the motivations. But why are those two related? Why? Because the fact that one hates the Cubs and one loves the Cubs and they want to go to the stadium for different reasons, it's like, well, what is putting all these ideas together? And so they're calling them both motivations for the same thing. Now, of course, there's a story there because one's a Cub hater and one's a Cub lover. But what exactly goes into that? And so why do the facts that they're both going to the stadium to see because the Cubs play there is less of a reason than the particular issues, the psychological issues of the two people? Why are the psychological issues of the two people relevant here? I'm not sure, like picking that out. And that scares me because I want to say that it looks a little bit like they are cherry picking the facts that they are calling reasons. Okay, continuing. And like I said before, and if anyone's new, please feel free to ask me questions. We're reading this paper on what are primary reasons, and the author is saying it's normative reasons are primary reasons. Okay, advocates of the orthodoxy can resist this argument in at least 3 ways. First, they may insist that goals are facts and that the case is therefore consistent with the orthodox view. Yeah, because you could say it's a fact about their mental states, and so you're just picking out the facts. So everything's still a fact. It's not a normative fact. It's still just a fact. In other words, they may insist that agents who act for different goals on the basis of different facts thereby act for different reasons. This is sort of what I'm saying. How did they put it together? But this fails because goals are not facts. The most decisive argument for the distinction between goals and facts involves wading into the muddy waters of the semantics of 2 clauses. If 2 clauses do not denote propositions, as some theorists think, then they cannot express facts. Though I agree with these theorists that 2 clauses do not denote propositions, I haven't the space to explore that rebuttal here. Alright, my argument was not this sort of semantic thing. It's again, why are these... Actually, I didn't make this claim. This is not what I was saying, but this is similar to what I was saying, in that everything's still a fact. You can just say everything's still a fact, and so sort of like the fact about their mental states, and so everything's still a fact. And then the argument here is sort of that, no, you have to do a lot of work to make the sort of motivating things into facts, and so that doesn't quite work. I can understand that. It's saying, look, you can force everything into a fact. That's just sort of a metaphysics, but that's a very heavyweight metaphysics. And so if you want to reject the sort of thing that says, look, there's facts in the world that they're Cubs fans and the Cubs play at Wrigley Field, those are fine. But then if you're going to start saying, well, the motivation is also a fact, then you're starting to nitpick at the what really counts as what people think of as facts. Because you generally think of that as motivations, not sort of like the fact of their psychological state. But that's not what I was saying above. Okay, a simpler argument for the distinction between facts and goals is that goals don't need to be true to give normative reasons, but propositions need to be true, that is, to be facts, to give normative reasons. Okay, so yeah, other things that are different. For example, if I desire to drink water, some think that said desire is equivalent to the desire that I drink water, assessed in some de se or first personal mode. However, I can decide to drink water when I'm not drinking water. In that situation, assuming that the contents of desires are propositions, the content of my desire is to drink water is not true. Nevertheless, the goal of drinking water gives me a prudential reason to go to the water fountain when I'm thirsty. Consequently, goals needn't be truths to give reasons, so goals don't play the role of facts in normative reasons. A final rebuttal rests in observing that facts and goals move us differently. For example, it is widely assumed that facts cannot move us as a motivating reason unless we believe them. But even if goals were facts, we needn't bear a cognitive relation to them when they motivate us, only a conative one. Consequently, there is an important motivational difference between facts and goals for which the orthodox view does not account. This is reason enough to look beyond the view. Yeah, so basically, you don't have to go through the semantics. You can just say, look, this is not what we normally mean when we say fact is a sort of motivating goal. And if you're not going to argue, if you're just going to sort of insist on the hardcore, anything can be a fact, then you can go into the technicalities of that up here, which is fine, but I don't think most people are going to try to force that. Okay, however, philosophers can resist the argument 2 other ways by denying that either of the 2 claims on which it rests. They may deny that all normative reasons are motivating reasons, or they may deny that the Cubs fan and the Cubs hater go to Wrigley for different reasons, finding it natural to think that they go to Wrigley for the same reason precisely because they go on the basis of the same fact. Fortunately, these 2 responses can be rebutted by a distinct but closely related argument that does not depend on either claim. Okay, and I just want to be clear, my argument was that what did I say? My brain goes, I forget everything so quickly. My argument was that, we'll see. I'll try to remember. I just want to be clear on, I don't think I was saying either of these 2 exactly, but I might have, it might have just been another version of these arguments. Okay. Distinguishing prudential, mine was on the grainedness of the motivations, actually. That was the issue here. So, is close to not all normative reasons are motivating reasons. So it's how are you picking the normative reasons? So I'm not exactly sure if I said either of these, but how do you actually pick out what counts as a reason? And maybe that's just a more general problem, so I don't know. Alright, continuing. Distinguishing prudential and moral reasons. Consider two agents, the pure egoist and the pure altruist. The pure egoist cares only for herself. She is motivated only by prudential reasons. The pure altruist cares only for others. She is motivated only by moral reasons. As a result, these two agents are motivated in wholly different ways, and since motivating reasons characterize our motives, these two agents never act the same way for the same reason, given the schism between their motives. If we add the orthodox supposition that normative reasons are facts, this scenario implies that these two agents never perform an action on the basis of the same fact. But that's clearly false. For example, each can be moved to save a child because the child is drowning. This is possible because the altruist's and the egoist's goals differ. The altruist is moved, we may suppose, by her goal of respecting and preserving human life. By contrast, the egoist is moved, we may suppose, by her goal of being esteemed and rewarded for saving the child. Nevertheless, it is possible for the same fact, and only that fact, to move each to perform the same act. We must therefore reject one of the foregoing claims. As I'll argue, the least plausible claim is the orthodox view that reasons are fact. And I just want to point out this qualifier here, and only that fact. See, this is where I'm coming in. Where are we getting to pick what counts as a particular fact? And this is my worry here, that I'm not saying exactly what the author is here, but this only that fact had to make a big difference, had to do work here. So there's work being done by the selection of facts here. Okay. Like the case of the Cubs fan and the Cubs hater, this case suggests only that acting on the basis of the same fact does not suffice for acting for the same reason. It does not entail that normative reasons are primary reasons. However, primary reasons offer an enticing explanation of how reasons are more finely grained than facts, for it offers an explanation of how reasons resemble facts enough to be confused for them. For example, if normative reasons are primary reasons, then distinct normative reasons, like the egoist prudential reason and the altruist moral reason, can overlap on the same fact, while nevertheless remaining distinct in virtue of containing different goals. And I agree with this. It's like basically, you can do the same thing for different reasons. And so, I mean, I guess you could say maybe you didn't do the same thing, but that would be really sort of ad hoc. It'd be just sort of forcing through, like you're saying, well, the one person didn't save the child, the one person basically helped themselves. But then you could also argue on the other hand, then the other person just like acted according to their moral stance, and so neither of them did the same thing at that point, and one of them isn't actually neither of them saved the child. Then they acted according to these other things. And so it's like neither of them did that. And so that gets kind of weird, though. But like I think that this is a good argument because basically it shows that if you have people acting for different reasons, they can basically end up acting in the same exact way, though, which is what the fact talk is. And since this is an argument against fact talk, this is a good argument. Indeed, a now familiar reason exists for thinking that normative reasons can contain both goals and facts. Strikingly, Davidson's observation that we attribute motivating reasons in two different ways, which correspond to primary reasons' two parts, also holds for the attribution of normative reasons. For example, we can claim that a moral reason to save the drowning child is to respect and preserve human life. Likewise, we can claim that a prudential reason to save the drowning child is to be esteemed and rewarded. If taken at face value, these two clause reasons attributions track differences between moral and prudential reasons, just as more familiar that clause reasons attributions are thought to. Okay, yeah, so basically we're just sort of recapitulating other analyses now on the moral side, which is kind of cool. Because these claims involve the attribution of prudential and moral reasons, they provide strong evidence that, for example, the goal of respecting and preserving human life is part of a moral reason, while the goal of being esteemed and rewarded is not. Well, that depends on what you think morality is, so I'm not sure. But the point is that you can make this distinction, and it is made quite often. However, despite my great sympathy for these claims, I stress that I am simply assuming that they are true in order to illustrate the dual aspect view. Indeed, I am not defending any particular view about which reasons are normative, much less about which reasons are moral or prudential in particular. I am simply defending a particular model or ontology of reasons according to which they are pairs of facts and goals rather than just facts or fact-like entities. Yeah, exactly. Okay. In contrast to Section 2's arguments, this argument does not rely on the premise that all normative reasons are motivating reasons, so one cannot resist the conclusion that normative reasons are primary reasons by denying that all normative reasons are motivating reasons. Nevertheless, like Section 2's argument, it rests on the assumption that the egoist and the altruist act for different reasons despite acting on the basis of the same fact. Given the deep divide in their motives, this claim is compelling. Nevertheless, some may be tempted to insist that the altruist and the egoist act for the same reason by insisting that some moral and prudential reasons for an agent to do something are identical. I'll now provide a third argument which shows that moral and prudential reasons for an agent to act in some way must be distinct, so we should accept that normative reasons are primary reasons. Okay. I mean, I'm basically in agreement here with this argumentation. Given that the author set it up where the motives are completely distinct, and yet they can act in the same way. It seems like, yeah, sure. You can say, look, the reasons are separate from like the fact in the world, and since there are different reasons for different goals, and therefore it does not reduce down to the same facts, or at least it shouldn't. You can reduce it down, but then you're missing something critical, and that's fine. Okay, weighing explanations. Defenders of the orthodoxy may read the case of the egoist and altruist differently. They may take it to show that if a single fact gives both a prudential reason for a single agent to save the child, for a certain agent to save the child, and a moral reason to do the same, then some facts, like that child is drowning, are sometimes both prudential and moral reasons for the agent to save the child simultaneously. This implies that counterintuitively, the egoist and the altruist can act for the same reason precisely because they can act on the basis of the same fact. However, as I'll now argue, different kinds of normative reasons for action, like prudential and moral reasons, must be numerically distinct if reasons are to play the most central role in moral philosophy, namely their role in weighing explanations of normative facts. In other words, I'll show that weighing explanations require primary reasons fineness of grain. Okay, maybe this is getting to what I was worried about above. And what the argument is here doing is saying, look, the fact that the child needs saving is the fact that contains all the prudential and moral reasons. So all the reasons are baked into that. And so that's one fact. It's baked in, and so they're acting on the same reason the child needs saving, which has the prudential and moral reasons that even though the agents sort of feel differently about it, it's all baked into the fact that the child is drowning. Okay, so if you're going to bake it in, then you might say, well, it's the same fact then. And the author says, well, no, we have to talk about this differently. All right. When deliberating about what to do, we weigh considerations. For example, that wine is tasty favors drinking another glass. But then I'll feel terrible in the morning if I do favors abstaining. I've never seen that phrase before. Maybe that means if you drink too much. Interesting. Okay, but I'll feel terrible in the morning if I do favors abstaining. When deliberating about whether to have another glass, I assess how strongly each consideration bears on what to do, or how weighty each consideration is, and act on the consideration I deem weightier. Now, here's a problem with drinking wine. You drink enough wine, the weighing gets all messed up. You think all of a sudden it becomes a great idea to drink another glass of wine. But anyway, weighing explanations of what you should do resemble this picture of deliberation. What one should do is explained by the balance of reasons for or against the relevant options. Reasons are more or less weighty as a function of how strongly each bears, not bears, on the question of what to do. I mean, okay, let's see. I'm not exactly sure where this is going. Questions about what someone should do can be answered in a similar manner. Of course, should has different senses, which are explained by different groups of reasons. It is controversial whether there is an unrestricted, all things considered sense of should, where all reasons are relevant. But there are clearly senses of should, like as rational, moral, or prudential senses, where only certain reasons are relevant. For example, that I've promised to show up on time for dinner tonight is a moral reason to show up on time. But if on my way to dinner I see a cyclist get into an accident, then that's a moral reason not to show up on time and to stay behind and to help the cyclist instead. What I should do in this circumstance, morally speaking, depends on the weights of these two reasons. If the promise is especially important, say a promise to my beloved to show up on time to our wedding reception, then that's a weighty reason to show up on time. And if the cyclist's injuries are especially grave, that's an especially weighty reason to stay behind. Suppose that, in this particular circumstance, both reasons are equally weighty. In that case, you may keep the promise or you may stay behind. Either option is morally permissible. Crucially, only moral reasons figure in this balance. For example, imagine that the cyclist offers you $10 to help them. The reason given by this reward, suppose, shift the balance of all reasons, making the otherwise perfectly counterbalanced set of reasons to help the cyclist weightier than the set of the reasons to keep the promise. In that case, you should, all things considered, help the cyclist rather than keep the promise. Nevertheless, even if the cyclist offers you a reward to break the promise, you may, morally speaking, keep it. The reward is irrelevant to what you should do, morally speaking, because it gives a merely prudential reason to help, which must be ignored when determining the balance of moral reasons. Now, contra what the author said above, this is again saying that the prudential are not moral. Now, so I guess this is fine to make an arbitrary distinction and saying, well, whatever it is that one thing says you matters when other things don't, and then they offer you one of the things that don't shouldn't matter, but then it's okay. I mean, it's like this is a convention here that money is not morally relevant in the situation, because say you need that $10 to buy some medicine for your sick mother, and so all of a sudden that $10 really might make a moral difference to you. So is it prudential? Because this is, again, assuming that the prudential and the moral are completely disjoint. So we have to keep that in mind here. But, alright. So I'm not exactly sure. Again, and then they say the balance of all reasons. And they just said it's controversial. So it's a little shaky for me right here. Because the author themselves admitted that this is all things considered is a little hard, but then down here, all things considered is being used. So I understand what they're saying. I think what they're saying is right, but I'm a little uncertain on this argumentation, because it seems like you're undermining what you want to be using right over here, just above it. So I would have done this slightly differently, but I don't think there's any problem here. It's pretty clear still. Okay, just a little bit of worries about the structure of the argumentation. If anyone has questions, please let me know too. More generally, the balance of a set of reasons explains what someone should do in any of the restricted senses of should, may, and so on, only if that set meets two criteria. It must include only reasons relevant to the restricted sense in question. Otherwise, it risks assigning too much weight to one of the options. Likewise, the set of reasons must also include all the relevant reasons. Otherwise, it risks assigning too little weight to one of the options. When some fact gives two reasons, one relevant to weighing an explanation and one irrelevant, we must include the former and exclude the latter. The trouble with claiming that a single fact is both a moral and prudential reason now emerges. Suppose that two children, qualitatively identical in all morally relevant respects, are drowning and only one can be saved. So you got two twins drowning. And they're equally far away from you, and you can only save one. Yeah, which one do you pick to jump in first? To go for first. Consequently, you may save either, but you must save one. Moreover, one child is from a rich family, the other child is not. The person who saves the first child will be richly rewarded, not so for the second. Supposing that reasons are facts, the fact that the rich child is drowning is a moral reason to save them. It's also a prudential reason to save them. This creates a dilemma. Either we include that fact when determining the balance of moral reasons, or we do not. If we do include it, we'll have to allow a prudential reason to distort the balance of moral reasons. The prudential dimension of that fact distorts the balance of moral reasons in precisely the same way that the cyclist reward does, creating a specious moral obligation to save the rich child where there is none. However, see again, your sick mom needs medicine. Should you invest in GameStop and screw with like the stock market and make a fortune right now? I don't know. But like you're ruining people's lives. Granted, they're hedge fund people's lives. But maybe you think that's a moral obligation right there. I don't know. But like the question is like, see, this is the problem when you start adding money into these things. People assume that like the $10 is not a significant amount of money. And so because it just would be like, okay, you get yourself an extra cup of coffee or something. That's not how the world works. You can't just assume money doesn't matter to people because we live in a society that uses money. And so the moral space over here is very muddled. But yeah, if you have two disjoint reasoning schemes, we're going to call them moral and prudential, and then all of a sudden you get yourself in a situation where one says to do one thing, except where one is equal balance and the other one is not, then of course it looks like, given that setup, granted you've defined it that way, that you can't say they're identical. But again, this is looking like they've set it up this way. So what exactly are we learning here? This is one of these sort of intuition pump arguments. Like, this does make perfect sense and is perfectly clear, and I think most people will agree to it. I'm just not in love with the argumentation because it's basically playing off people's intuitions. Do you think like that the moral and prudential are separate? And if you don't, and I mean, I have no philosophical intuitions like other people at this point. I'm not sure if like we can even make that distinction, and I know it's the everyday thing to do. That's not the problem here. That's why I'm worried, because I don't know if you can separate out the prudential and moral so clearly. But anyway, okay, so if we exclude the fact, then we'll have ignored a morally relevant reason, thereby distorting the balance of moral reasons. We'll falsely suppose that the set of moral reasons includes only the fact that the second child is drowning. Since any reason trivially outweighs an absence of countervailing reasons, oh my god, big flowers, yay, buy flowers! Everyone should buy flowers for their friendly streamers. Since any reason trivially outweighs an absence of countervailing reasons, we'll be forced to falsely conclude that we must save the second child and may not save the first. Consequently, the assumption that the reasons are facts leads to an insoluble dilemmas, like where we must either include an irrelevant reason or exclude a relevant one in a weighing explanation. Yeah. Let's see, is there anything else to say here? I'm just trying to look. Because if like the kids are equally morally savable, but then you've got a prudential reason for one, you have to understand what the difference is in the morality versus prudentiality of it. And so as long as we do make this sort of distinction, I think that's all the author needs. So, I mean, even though I don't love everything here, I think like they're 100% right, which is fine. Okay. By contrast, if normative reasons are primary reasons, then we can distinguish between two reasons given by a single fact by associating them with different goals. Perhaps the moral reason given by the fact that a child is drowning is associated with the moral goal of preserving and respecting human life. Perhaps the prudential reason is associated with the prudential goal of earning rewards and praise. So long as moral and prudential goals do not overlap, we'll have solved the problem. As a result, we cannot resist the argument for primary reasons as normative reasons given by the case of the egoist and the altruist by asserting that because they act on the basis of the same fact, the two agents act for the same reason. The two reasons given by that fact, one moral and one prudential, must be distinct if we are to preserve reason's most central role in moral philosophy. Okay, so if you are going to at least be able to recognize moral philosophy, whatever the moral or prudential is that you care, the whole point of moral philosophy is that it classifies those things as fundamental. And so if you want to have any sort of moral philosophy, then you have to be able to at least make moral distinctions moral versus non-moral distinctions to keep moral philosophy as a distinct philosophy, as it were. Okay, so that's fair too. Yeah, whatever. I've just argued that weighing explanations depend on distinctions that facts taken as reasons don't provide, and facts taken as reasons don't provide, and I propose that we should instead weigh more complex objects that resemble primary reasons. I'll briefly consider three responses to this final argument before concluding. The first response concedes that the problem for weighing explanations that I described is genuine, but according to this response, it doesn't show that reasons are not facts. All it shows is that we need to make our weighing explanations more complex somehow. Okay, yeah. A first attempt at doing so starts with my claim: facts don't provide all the distinctions that a weighing explanation requires. On its face, this claim is odd. Facts can draw arbitrary, fine-grained distinctions. After all, conjunction is recursively iterable. How then could reasons draw more distinctions than facts? Indeed, the problem for weighing explanation above appears to dissolve if we weigh only more finely grained conjunctive facts rather than the atomic facts initially used to generate the problem. Consider the difference between the following. That child is drowning. That child is drowning, and I'll be rewarded if I save them. For example, it's natural to think that while 1 gives a moral reason to save them, 2 doesn't. It's a purely prudential reason. This latter fact favors saving the child in only a prudential way and not a moral way, so it does not undermine the weighing explanation of what you should morally do. However, observations about 2 do not show what must be shown to rebut the argument. That argument concerns 1 and its problematic dual significance, not 2. So unless it can be shown through additional argument that facts about 2 imply that 1 is not problematic, discussion of 2 rather than 1 is merely a distraction. Let me also restate the dialectical import of my main claim that 1 gives both a prudential and moral reason. I am not trying to defend a particular view about which reasons are moral. I am simply trying to defend a model of normative reasons inspired by primary reasons. Consequently, I think that it's extremely plausible that 1 gives both a moral and prudential reason in the context I've described. Even if it doesn't, it suffices that 1 makes it extremely likely that some facts give both moral and prudential reasons, and that those facts will create similar problems. That likelihood shines a flattering light on the dual aspect view. And basically what's being said here is that, look, the child is drowning can be, say, the child is drowning and I'll be rewarded if I save them, or you can say the child is drowning and therefore it's morally important that I go do something. So that the child is drowning can play the dual role, even if in 2 it's being more specified what, but that doesn't mean that didn't actually occur in number 1 also. Okay, so on a different way of looking at the problem, it shows that only the reason relation, the relational property exemplification of which distinguishes reason-given facts from more prosaic ones, is more complex than is ordinarily thought to be. And this was a funky sentence. Exemplification and prosaic in one sentence. All right. From this point of view, making the reason relation more complex makes weighing explanations correspondingly more complex. Sure. For example, we may think that the facts that the rich child is drowning stands in 2 reason relations. It stands in the moral reason relation as a result it gives a moral reason to save the child, but also stands in the distinct prudential reason relation. As a result, it also gives a prudential reason to save the child. Moreover, this account is consistent with the orthodox view, for it is consistent with the claim that each normative reason is identical to the fact that it gives. However, positioning complex reason relations solves nothing all by itself. When we make relations more finely grained, we make the conditions under which an object satisfies the corresponding relational property more finely grained. For example, when we shift from a conception of an intention that relates sentences to worlds to one that relates sentences to worlds and times, we are able to characterize how the passage of time affects a sentence's truth. But we don't make sentences themselves more finely grained, only the conditions under which they're true. Likewise, when we make the reason relation more finely grained by adding a parameter reflecting morality or prudence, we gain the ability to distinguish how, loosely speaking, morality or prudence may make a fact reason giving. But we do not make reasons themselves more finely grained. Yeah, so it's saying, look, if you're going to start talking about morality or prudentiality, you're adding that in. That doesn't change the fact that the kid's drowning. The kid's drowning is just sort of like the physics of the matter. Like the kid's head's going to go underwater. That doesn't make it moral or prudential. And if we start talking about that, that's a separate issue. Okay. Crucially, to solve the problem, we need to make reasons themselves more finely grained, not simply the conditions under which they are reasons more finely grained. The problem shows that when offering a weighing explanation of a normative property like the one denoted by moral should, the objects weighed in that explanation cannot straddle the distinction between morality and prudence. Distinguishing the moral reason relation from the prudential reason relation doesn't all by itself make weighing explanations more complex, for the simple fact that weighing explanations weigh reasons, not reason relations. Sure. Rather, only if we also make the weighing explanation more complex, so that it is sensitive to the parameter in the reason relation that allegedly distinguishes morality from prudence, this strategy address the problem. There are at least three general worries with this approach, in addition to the idiosyncratic worries that come with different choices for the parameter in question. First, it is entirely ad hoc, motivated by a need to solve the problem and not by independent considerations. Second, because weighing explanations are more complicated than ordinary thoughts on this view, they are less natural and so less appealing. We cannot simply say that morality requires an act favored by the balance of moral reasons. We must say that morality requires that the act favored by the balance of moral reasons relative to P, where P is the parameter that distinguishes morality from prudence. The naturalness of weighing explanations, like the first, largely accounts normative reasons' centrality in contemporary moral philosophy. The second, more cumbersome analysis undercuts that appeal, so it offers only a pyrrhic solution to the problem. Finally, opting for this solution jettisons our easy account of two-clause reason attributions, which strongly suggest locating goals in the reasons themselves rather than the reason relation, which, as a side benefit, appears to distinguish morality and prudence, thereby solving the problem described above in an independently motivated fashion. All right, what is going on here is a little complicated. See, like the parameter in the reason relation that allegedly distinguishes morality from prudence. So, again, how do you distinguish between these two things? This is one of my worries above. And so it seems like, look, it is entirely ad hoc to do, and it's not motivated by independent considerations. See, for most people, it's not motivated by independent considerations. People like me who are just like confused about the entire world, yeah, this is not ad hoc to me. It's like I'm worried, how do we distinguish morality and prudentiality? But it's given by definition in this paper that they're different, and it doesn't really matter. As long as you make some distinction between different sorts of motivations, then you're going to run into a similar sort of problem. So it doesn't really matter that like whatever ad hoc is going on here, because it's going to, as long as you aren't like a monist about all reasons, then you're going to run into this. Okay. And then like weighing explanation is more complicated, blah, blah, blah. What else is going on here? So if it's relative to P, where P is what makes the distinction, it's sort of, that's fine. Yeah, so then again, it's like, well, then you get back to the above argument that what else are we talking in moral philosophy? Now, this is an appeal to authority. That's not necessarily a bad thing here, just because it's like such an authority. All of moral philosophy, people think there is some sort of moral stuff out there. So appeal to that is not terrible. It's just like, fine, you can do that. And then the problem is, the second, more cumbersome analysis undercuts that appeal. All right, so if you're just going to like toss the moral philosophy, and it's like, well, then you're just circling around. You don't know what this stuff is. But then then you can go back to your everyday sort of understanding. Like, isn't there differences between reasons? And like, what is that? If you're just going all the way back to the beginning, saying, look, what are the semantics of what you're talking about? I don't agree with this. This is my confusion from above. But again, it's an everyday sort of thing. You have to sort of make some distinction somewhere. And so this is my confusion in the above argument. But like, that's fine. I don't think other people are as crazy as I am. So what this author is doing is making a very sort of, I don't want to say reasonable. It's more sort of like an everyday appeal that people should be agreeing to. And, that's kind of what's saying here. Like, look, if you try to like muddle the distinction here, you're gonna run into you don't know what you're talking about, and you won't be able to talk to anyone else in moral philosophy, and so you don't want to be going down that road. Okay. The final response that I wish to raise on behalf of the orthodoxy is the doubt that goals distinguish morality from prudence despite appearances. Okay, so we're getting back to this problem. If some goals are both prudential and moral, then the dual aspect view does not in fact help distinguish reasons that must be kept distinct. This worry is genuine. Indeed, depending on how we understand what it is for a goal to be moral or prudential, overlap in goals seems possible. For example, suppose that a goal is moral just when its pursuit tends to make an act morally right. Likewise, suppose that a goal is prudential just when its pursuit tends to make an act prudent. If a view like classical utilitarianism is true, then this account of what makes goals moral or prudential implies that some goals, like that of experiencing happiness, are both moral and prudential. On these assumptions, that goal is both moral and prudential because, other things equal, pursuing one's happiness tends to make an act both moral and prudential. So this would be like a special case where everything overlaps. Okay. As a result, proponents of the dual aspect account can't simply deny that a goal is moral just when and because its pursuit tends to make an act right. Rather, they must reject any account that similarly predicts overlap in prudential and moral goals. However, there is independent reason for doing so. For example, Christine Swanton argues roughly that one acts virtuously just when and because one act aims at and realizes a virtuous end. According to her, moral goals aren't simply the ones whose pursuit tend toward morally right actions. They're the ones that constitute virtuous motives, whose successful pursuit suffices for virtue. Alright, so it's like, yeah, I mean, is this really a problem that there's a dual view, but like maybe in a few special cases it's not really that bad? Like if you only have to worry about like giant things like being completely virtuous or being completely like pure happiness in the utilitarian sense, maybe that's okay in those few cases. Like what would I don't think that's this is a decent response. Swanson's account implies that prudential and moral goals do not overlap. Okay, I'm sorry. Did I get that wrong? Whatever. Continue to find out what happens. Were overlap possible, a purely selfish agent could just act as virtuously as a morally well-intentioned one, or the first to successfully pursue such a goal. But that's impossible. That's what they're doing. Okay. Only the well-intentioned agent acts virtuously. So Swanton's account implies that no virtuous ends are prudential ones. Consequently, the worry that prudential and moral goals overlap rests on an assumption that are contestable on independent grounds. Okay. So basically, if you think you can overlap, like maybe under some theories, but under other theories, they don't overlap. So it depends on kind of what is your preferred moral theory, and even in like these cases, it seems like a pretty limited account of when they would overlap to be perfectly moral and perfectly prudential. It'd be only in the very, very rare case of like perfect happiness, and so, and then plenty of other accounts like virtue accounts, I think, would not allow that to occur. And I think that's at least if you're going to look at the kind of like bigger picture of moral philosophy, sure, that's a way to go. To be clear, this manner of addressing the third worry does not compromise the dual aspects account's neutrality on the substantive first-order question of which reasons are moral or of which goals are part of moral reasons. Rather, it only requires committing to a structural claim about whether prudential and moral goals can overlap. Arguments from Swanton and others are grounds for thinking that they do not. But denying that prudential and moral goals overlap does not require affirming that certain goals or reasons are moral or prudential. However, I recognize that more may need to be said to fully dispel this concern. Conclusion. Moral philosophers have largely ignored primary reasons on two grounds. The first is the assumption that normative reasons and motivating reasons are the same kind of things, and the dogma that normative reasons are facts. The second is anti-psychological can't speak anymore. The second is anti-psychologism about all reasons. I've argued that the dogma appears inconsistent with weighing explanations, and have shown how the most important features of primary reasons are, as normative reasons, their fineness of grain and their explanation of the different ways that we attribute reasons do not depend on psychologism about reasons. My hope is that these arguments motivate renewed interest in Davidson's primary reasons. Okay, very nice paper, really. Very nice paper. You have to kind of like this stuff, of course, because it's a little bit in the weeds of understanding primary reasons and like the sort of Davidsonian worldview, which is okay, and there's a lot of them in at least professional philosophy. So once you start doing that, then you can then start looking at what sort of examples are primary reasons in the normative sense, and then you say, look, you have to have like goal-based things, like goal-oriented things, and then once you have goals, you can have different sorts of goals that have the same sort of fact basis in fact. And once you do that, then you can just say, look, you can have different goals based on the same way the world is oriented, and have the people act in the same way, but for different reasons. And yeah. So there you go. And you don't have to base it on the state of the mind or whatever. You can have moral theories that cover this, which is what the author was doing here at the end, with they're talking about virtue. Because you don't need to base it on like the fact of their minds. You can say, look, they're acting in moral ways based on virtue as opposed to that. Or maybe even just sort of some sort of a classic utilitarian happiness account. And like maybe there's different ways to do that. Even though like the moral and prudential, because that looks like the same calculation. But even then you might say, look, the way they're getting at the calculation is still different. Which is what this would be like. How would you actually achieve the correct sort of utilitarian most happiness calculation? Is there, even though they're doing like the sort of the same math, they don't think of the math in the same way. One's saying I'm making the most happiness, or I'm acting virtuously, and the other one is acting without virtue. Maybe just sort of like a computer is just doing it, and the computer just does it because that's what computers do. Is the computer acting virtuously? Well, yeah, I don't know. Computers need love too. Okay, now, again, there was this weird problem of how do you distinguish between moral and prudential, and it looks like the author struggled through the entire paper with keeping clear about this. I raised it earlier. I still have a problem, it still seems like you're picking and choosing things the whole time. Well, thanks for stopping by, Bubble Bloop. I appreciate it. I hope you have a good meal. Cool. Well, I'm probably going to get off soon. I just wanted to read some philosophy, but hey, maybe I'll stick around. But hopefully I'll see you soon. And thanks for stopping by again. Appreciate it. So yeah. Yeah. I think that really came out here is when you start having to pick and choose what facts count. So you're picking and choosing what facts count because you have a preconceived notion of what the moral stance of the people are, their motivating stance, what are the goals. And so you've already in some sense made a decision about which facts count when you're choosing what counts as a reason. So the fact that one person hates the Chicago Cubs and the fact that the other person loves the Chicago Cubs, in some sense, was colored by your preconception and possibly even sort of like cherry picking of the way what you wanted their motivations to be. And so, in some sense, it feels like the author is playing off our everyday sort of notions. And I mentioned this later at one point too, that like an intuition pump. They're trying to get some very, very sort of like common feelings about these things. And that doesn't necessarily mean like when you do that, I don't love that stuff myself. I mean, I don't think there's any problem here, but I just don't love that kind of argumentation because I don't know if everyone has the same like if there really is a sort of universal understanding that two things are going to be, well, just the universal understanding is that's the whole problem. We don't all agree. And so for the most part, this seems like a very sort of straightforward paper, but there's some subtle things going on in the distinction between what counts as moral versus prudential, and also between how we understand what counts as a relevant fact in this whole paper. And so these are the sort of things I'm thinking about. But like I said, I think it was actually, for the most part, this was well written, well argued, except for that one overly complex sentence, which I bet the author kind of liked that sentence. I mean, whenever I've written overly complex sentences, they get left in because I like them, not because it's actually a good, quite often not a good idea, but I tend to like them when I get to write some like big words and sentences. Okie dokie. Does anyone have any more questions? Not too many questions today, but that's all right. Let's see. Anything else to say? Not too much. But yeah, good paper. Especially if you're in this sort of area, which many people are, then I think this is I've seen a few arguments over the years saying that we have to treat normativity as primary. And usually the arguments are very sophisticated. And so the question of what counts as actually primary, and the last time I heard was more of a metaphysical argument that normativity is like metaphysically more primary than just like other things. And so yeah, I mean, but like these sort of arguments tend to be kind of metaphysics heavy, and it's very interesting stuff usually. So if you're into this sort of thing, I'd encourage you to look into more of this. All right. Thanks everyone for being here. I hope everyone has a fantastic night. Stay safe out there. It's still sort of messy in the world. Oh, it's always messy in the world. GameStop. Just like the one day in the world, like we're saying buying GameStop stock, like a little crazy. But yeah. Have a great night, everyone. Goodbye.